something you'd laugh about with friends and never actually do. But for three broke college roommates, Maya, Jordan, and Chris, the idea of shaving and selling their pubic hair for money became more than just a joke. It became a decision. Oh, desperate choice at a desperate time. Rent was due. Bills were piling up. The fridge was empty. They were living on ramen noodles, skipping classes just to save on transport, and job offers were nowhere in sight. So when Maya stumbled upon a bizarre ad online offering cash for authentic, clean, and personally groomed hair for use in, let's just say, niche art projects, they laughed. Then they paused. Then they read the fine print. And what happened next would change their lives forever. Because the moment they agreed to it, they had no idea they weren't just selling hair. They were signing away their privacy, their peace, and their sense of safety. You might think this story is about humiliation, or maybe greed. But what it's really about is control. Because once someone owns a piece of you, no matter how small, you'll never be truly free. It all started with Maya scrolling on her old cracked iPad, trying to find a side hustle. Her bank account had $2.17. She hadn't eaten since the night before. Rent was overdue and the landlord had left a third warning note on their door. "We need cash now," she muttered, rubbing her temples. Chris was lying on the couch covered in a hoodie, scrolling mindlessly on his phone. Jordan was pacing the kitchen, counting coins from a jar they used for laundry. It was bleak. Then Maya found something, a forum thread titled, "Weirdest Ways You've Made Money." She clicked. And there it was. A user had posted about a collector in New York who paid real money for pubic hair. Organic only. No dyes. No chemicals. Must be authentic. Maya read it out loud, laughing. No way this is real. But the room fell silent. Jordan raised an eyebrow. Chris pulled down his hoodie, and within minutes, curiosity turned into a plan. They found the original post. The collector had a website, a weird one, black background, red letters, no contact form. Just a message. "I collect things most people throw away. If you're brave, I'll pay." Below it was a submission button. Upload a name, an address, and a small sample to prove you were serious. The three of them joked about it. How stupid it sounded. But they couldn't stop thinking about it. $500 per donation, enough for rent, enough for food, enough to survive a little longer. So they did it. Each of them. They followed the instructions, sealed their samples, sent them off, and laughed nervously as they walked to the post office. They didn't know who was behind the site, or why anyone would want something so intimate. They just knew they were desperate. And someone out there had the money they needed. 3 days later, envelopes arrived. Cash, no note, just a symbol, a strange black spiral drawn on thick cardstock. That night, they went out for burgers and beer, celebrating their weirdest payday ever. But none of them noticed the car parked across the street, or the figure watching from inside it. Waiting. Because for the collector, this was only the beginning. The next morning, the mood had changed. The laughter from the night before felt distant, like a dream they couldn't fully remember. The black spiral symbol, simple, clean, almost hypnotic, was still sitting on the kitchen counter. Chris picked it up again, running his fingers over the strange, glossy surface. "It's probably just branding," he muttered. But Jordan wasn't so sure. She'd seen something like it before, on a subreddit about modern cults and secret art dealers who believed in energetic signatures left behind on personal items. She remembered scrolling past a comment that said, "They don't buy your things, they buy your energy." At the time, she thought it was nonsense, but now, that spiral was starting to get under her skin. Still, they all tried to ignore it. Money was money. And when another message appeared on Maya's phone, this time, no number, no contact, just a sentence. "You did well. Let's make it bigger." She couldn't look away. Attached was an address, a warehouse downtown, and an offer, $5,000 cash each. All they had to do was come in person and bring more. This time, it didn't feel like a joke, but the temptation was too strong. Maya's car was about to be repossessed. Chris had a medical bill he'd been hiding for weeks. Jordan's mom was sick back home and needed help. They tried to talk themselves out of it, but the decision had already been made in their minds. Curiosity had hooked them. Greed reeled them in. And when they showed up at the warehouse, a silent, unmarked building with only the spiral symbol painted faintly near the door, they felt something shift in the air. A man was waiting inside, thin, pale, dressed in gray. No name, no handshake, just calm eyes and a voice like cold water. "You've already proven your value," he said, "but you're not being paid for hair. You're being paid for trust and vulnerability." None of them understood what that meant. Not fully, but he placed envelopes in front of them, thicker than before. Real money. And then he smiled, just slightly, and said, "Now that we've started, we go deeper." They were led down a narrow hall. Rooms branched off to the sides, some with doors, some with curtains. One room had mirrors on every wall. Another was lined with old televisions, each one showing static. The man didn't explain. He just pointed. "You may leave at any time," he said, "but if you choose to stay, you accept the rules." Maya hesitated. Chris laughed nervously. Jordan asked, "What rules?" The man only smiled. And then the lights flickered. The air felt heavier, and they knew something wasn't right. But they were already in too deep. Before they could turn back, the door behind them locked with a soft click. And that spiral symbol, it was everywhere now, painted on the ceiling, reflected in the mirrors, whispered in the hum of the flickering lights. They weren't just part of a transaction anymore. They were part of something bigger, something darker, something watching. They should have walked away. They should have grabbed the money and run. But greed is a funny thing. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it strokes your ego and tells you you're special, that you're chosen. And that's exactly what the man in the gray suit did next. He didn't threaten them. He flattered them. "Most people don't follow through," he said calmly. "Most people lack courage. You three, you're different." His voice never rose. He never blinked too long. He made them feel seen, respected even. But under the surface, something about him felt hollow, mechanical, like he was playing a role written by someone else. The room shifted again. The lights dimmed, and suddenly music began playing. Slow, ambient tones that felt like they were crawling inside their heads. "You've proven you're willing to give a piece of yourself," he said. "Now we test how much you'll share when it's not about money, but meaning." That's when the tests began. They weren't told it was a test. They weren't told anything, just led into separate rooms, alone. Maya's room was empty, except for a mirror and a chair. On the mirror, written in red ink, were the words, "Write down your secret." A blank sheet of paper lay on the chair. No pen, just the paper. At first she laughed, but when she turned to leave, the door wouldn't budge. Then she noticed something chilling. Her reflection in the mirror wasn't moving in sync. It was just a split-second delay, like watching herself from someone else's eyes. She screamed and pounded on the door, but no one answered. So finally, shaking, she sat down and wrote the thing she'd never told anyone. Not even Chris or Jordan. A secret so shameful she buried it deep for years. The moment she placed the paper on the floor, the lights flickered. The door clicked, and it opened. Chris's room was darker. No mirror, just a table, a pair of headphones, and a screen that showed nothing but static. The headphones buzzed with faint whispers, voices he didn't recognize at first. Then suddenly, his name, over and over, and then his father's voice. A voicemail he thought he had deleted years ago, the one his dad left the night before he died. "You were never there," it said. "I needed you, son." Chris ripped the headphones off. But they kept whispering. Even without power, he yelled, "What do you want from me?" And a voice replied, this time, not in the headphones, but in the room itself. "Tell the truth." The screen changed. A prompt appeared. "Do you blame yourself?" 2 buttons, yes or no. He stared at them for a long time, then finally he pressed yes. The screen shut off. The whispers stopped. The door opened. Jordan's experience was different. Her room was filled with photos of herself. Pictures she'd never seen before. Childhood photos, teenage selfies she thought she deleted, even shots from just days ago, on the bus, in class, walking to the store. Someone had been watching her, documenting her. She searched for a camera. There wasn't one. But she felt the eyes on her anyway. Then she saw it. At the far end of the room, taped to the wall, a photo of her mother. Recent, but her mother was sick and lived across the country. This photo was taken just days ago. Jordan stepped closer and saw a note attached. "Would you trade your future for her past?" She didn't understand until she heard a voice behind her whisper, "One will forget. One will suffer. Choose." 2 doors appeared. One marked her, the other marked you. Jordan stood frozen, tears in her eyes. Then, after what felt like forever, she chose you. She opened the door, walked through, and the room went black. Silence wrapped around them like a noose. The man in grey stepped away, leaving them alone in the cold room where their shame echoed on screens now dark. No doors were locked, no chains were present, yet none of them moved. That's what made it worse. This wasn't prison, this was a maze built inside their minds. And they'd walked into it willingly. Jordan was the first to move. "We can't stay," she whispered, voice cracking. "We have to go, even if they know everything." Maya and Chris followed, still trembling. They ran, through the halls, past the empty rooms, past the spiral symbols now pulsing red under the fluorescent lights. The warehouse door was unlocked. The street outside was quiet. For a moment it felt like it was over, but it wasn't. Back home, things didn't return to normal. They got worse. It started with the phone calls. At first just static, then a voice, familiar but distorted. Chris picked up one night and heard himself, his own voice, repeating what he'd said during his test. The voice said, "I should have answered, I should have been there." And then silence. He smashed the phone, but it rang again the next day, from a blocked number. He stopped answering. But the messages found other ways, printed on his bills, carved into the frost on his windshield. Graffiti sprayed on the sidewalk near his apartment. "I should have answered." Maya tried to delete her social media, but strange accounts followed her, each one using her childhood nickname. Bunny, they called her, something only her father used to say before things got bad. And then photos started to appear, from inside her apartment, from outside her shower. But there was never a break-in, never a camera she could find. She contacted the police once. They laughed. "You think someone's stalking you with photos from the future?" Because that's what it looked like. Images that hadn't been taken yet. Maya standing in a red dress she didn't own. Maya crying in a room she didn't recognize, and always somewhere in the corner. That spiral. Jordan's mother called, her one evening confused. "Why'd you send me that letter, sweetheart?" But Jordan hadn't sent anything. The letter claimed to be from Jordan, apologizing for a crime she didn't commit. Saying goodbye. It was signed in her handwriting. Every word sounded like her. Even the memories it referenced were real. But she hadn't written a single word. When Jordan asked to see it, her mother said, "I already burned it. I couldn't keep something so dark in the house." And then her mother stopped answering her calls. They met up a week later, hiding in a cafe on the edge of town. Jordan looked like she hadn't slept in days. Chris had a twitch in his eye he didn't have before. Maya was shaking. "They're everywhere," she whispered. "Not the people, the spirals. I see them in trees and stains and reflections. It's like they're following me." Chris nodded. "I think they're in our heads. I dream about the warehouse every night. But in my dreams, we never leave." Jordan pulled out a newspaper, folded, quiet, then opened it to the obituary section. One of the names, Lillian Bray. The woman who ran the original site. The one who'd paid them. She was dead. "Cause of death unknown," the article said. Found in her apartment surrounded by mirrors, spiral symbols drawn in blood. Maya dropped her coffee. "We're next," she whispered. When the three of them regrouped, they were pale, shaken, and quiet. None of them spoke. The man in gray smiled, satisfied. "Now you've given something real," he said. "Now you're ready for the final phase." They wanted to leave. They begged to go. But he shook his head slowly. "No," he said calmly. "You don't get to walk away yet, not until you understand what this was really about." The lights dimmed again, and behind him a curtain lifted. There on a raised platform was a screen. And on that screen was footage of them, in the rooms, writing secrets, listening, choosing. It was all recorded. Every moment, every tear, every confession. "People think we trade in hair, in flesh, in art," the man said. "But what we really trade in is shame, raw, unfiltered shame. And now your shame belongs to us." They were stunned. Maya whispered, "Why? Why would you do this?" The man chuckled. "Because shame is power, and power is expensive." He gestured toward a locked vault at the back of the room. "Your tapes will be stored, not destroyed, not leaked, just kept. Unless, of course, you agree to continue. There are others like you, many others. Some become collectors themselves, some vanish, some learn to enjoy the pain." The silence that followed was suffocating. Maya shook her head. "We're done," she said firmly. "We want out." But the man only smiled again. "Then you should have read the contract." Chris shouted. There was no contract. But the man turned to a shelf and pulled out 3 boxes. Inside each one, small envelopes, the ones they had sent, their hair, their samples, their fingerprints, their return addresses. "You gave more than you realized," he said softly. "You gave yourselves." That's when they knew. They were trapped, not by walls or locks, but by secrets, by fear, and by the knowledge that someone, somewhere, now owned pieces of them they could never get back. The spiral wasn't just a symbol anymore. It was a cycle, a trap, a deal they couldn't undo.